Hello, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Jakpost Up Close. This is our seventh webinar, and our topic for today is personal data protection and the rise of digital platforms. First of all, thank you for joining us today. My name is Prisa Benedita, and I'm a journalist at the Jakarta Post. Before we start, I would like to explain some rules for the webinar. So today we will have 4 distinguished speakers. We will start the sessions with a keynote speech from the Communications and Information Ministry, and then we will listen to some presentations from our speakers from Google, Gojek, and ELSAM. So each speaker will be given about 15 minutes to deliver their presentations. And afterwards, we will move to the Q&A session for about 40 minutes. So for the participants, feel free to ask any questions you may have during the keynote speech or presentation sessions or throughout the webinar if you want. So you can use the Q&A feature in your Zoom app, which should be placed in the bottom center of your screen. And also, please do not hesitate to ask questions in Bahasa Indonesia. I think that's all for the rules. Once again, thank you for participating in today's webinar. I would like to gently remind you that if you want Jakarta Post to contribute more to public discourse, subscribe today on the jakartapost.com/packages, and later I will share the link in the chat box as well. So I hope you'll enjoy this webinar, and I will hand over to our moderator for today. She is an editor at the Jakarta Post. Please welcome Mbak Marguerite Afra Sapiie. Without further ado, Mbak Afra, the platform is yours.
Thank you, Apriza. Good afternoon to all of the participants who have joined us today. I hope everyone is healthy and safe amid this pandemic. My name is Marguerite Afra Sapiie, the Jakarta Post editor and the moderator for our discussion this afternoon. The topic of our discussion today, I believe, is more relevant now than ever, considering that many of us here have turned to digital platforms, e-commerce, and mobile apps to do our jobs and access many services. Of course, we realize that these platforms usually require us to put our personal data, such as our mobile phone numbers, addresses, ID card, and even credit card numbers. However, often we treat these fill-in-the-blank activities as business as usual, since somehow we have the faith that our data will be safe there and will not be misused by certain parties who have access to them. But then reports emerged that millions of Indonesian citizens' data in some technology giants have been breached and shared illegally on some hackers' forum. Then we also heard stories about how people's personal data being stolen by unknown individuals and used to, for instance, take out loans that the real owner of the data know nothing about. These incidents have actually exposed to us how vulnerable our personal data in the cyberspace is. Well, when we talk about legal protection, Indonesia actually now has over 30 different laws that deal with personal data protection. However, the regulations as well as their enforcement are still deemed weak by many. Indonesia also yet to have an umbrella law that comprehensively regulates about data protection. But a bill that is expected to provide more efficacy on the matter, known as Personal Data Protection Bill, is currently being discussed at the House of Representatives, although it is still unclear whether the bill will be passed into law soon. With regards to all of the mentioned concerns, our webinar today will try to provide all of you with answers to some of our burning questions, including how exactly cyber attacks and data breach work, how digital platforms try to deal with personal data protection issue and challenges in doing so, as well as whether or not the data protection bill, if passed into law, will become a solution for data breaches in the country. We hope that at the end of this webinar, we can provide you more insights about efforts by the government and companies to protect people's personal data, as well as about how important it is for us as consumers and users to be aware of safety and security of our data in digital platforms. Already joining us here are 4 distinguished speakers who will share with you their expertise over the issue. So to begin this discussion, let's first welcome our keynote speaker, Pak Dedy Permadi, Special Advisor to the Minister of Communications and Informatics for Digital Policy and Human Resources Development. Good afternoon, Pak Dedy. How are you today?
Good afternoon, Mbak. I'm good.
Thanks for being with us this afternoon.
Thank you for inviting us, Mbak.
Our pleasure. As the representative of the government, Pak Dedy will inform us about the regulatory framework and government efforts to protect citizens' personal data. Pak Dedy, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Mbak Afra Sapiie and Mbak Shinto, Mbak Carmela, as well as Pak Wahyudi from ELSAM. Good afternoon, friends and colleagues. I'm so delighted to be here today to give my remarks on behalf of the Minister of Communication and Information Technology, Pak Joni G. Plate. Today, I hope our session will provide a medium for discussion that will bring fruitful ideas on how each side can contribute to the betterment of personal data protection, especially for and mainly for our citizens. The Ministry of Communications and Information Technology has set the foremost commitment to accelerate Indonesia's digital transformation through four main aspects. The first one is information and communication technology, or ICT infrastructure development. And the second one is the eminent digital talent improvement, both in quality and quantity. And third, passing the primary legislations in communications, information technology, including data protection. And fourth, strengthening international cooperation on digital economy and cross-border data flow. We believe, the ministry believes, that these four aspects will provide a strong basis for rebounding and becoming more resilient in the ever-digitizing world during and after the COVID-19 pandemic. During the pandemic, where most of our daily activities are now going digital, the notion of data protection is getting more critical, and it has been under our scrutiny. Being more exposed to the digital realm. As already mentioned by Mbak Afra before, data misuse, data leaks, data breaches are being more possible in this situation. There is no single factor that causes these data violations. Such issues might be caused by internal factors such as system inadequacy and human errors, as well as external factors such as cyber attacks and hackings. To anticipate the risk, in the ministry, we take a comprehensive approach by reaffirming ourselves as three main roles: as a regulator, as a supervisor, as well as an educator, to guarantee that citizens' rights for personal data protection are fulfilled. Friends and colleagues, in our role as a regulator, the Ministry of ICT here is committed and responsible for providing policy and regulation regarding personal data protection. As now, data protection and privacy are already being regulated in the country through at least three laws. The first one, law number 19 of 2016 on electronic information and transaction, or Undang-Undang ITE. The second one is the government regulation number 71 of 2019 regarding the implementation of electronic systems and transaction, or PSTE. And the last one is the decree of the Minister of ICT number 20 of 2016 on personal data protection in electronic system. So basically, we already have this Minister of ICT decree. However, it should be noted that there are limitations to these regulations, as ministerial decree has a limited scope, and data protection is not being regulated as specific in the ITE or ITE law and PSTA regulation. Therefore, we are currently sparing no effort to pass a comprehensive general data protection regulation or GDPR, also known as Indonesia's Rancangan Undang-Undang Pelindungan Data Pribadi or RUU PDP in the parliament. Considering the urgent need for data protection and privacy law in Indonesia, we aim for it to be passed soon this year. The Indonesian GDPR focuses on 5 main aspects, which are data collection, data processing, data security, data breach, and the right to erasure. Our GDPR will also use the principle of lawfulness, fairness, and transparency, and the principle of reciprocity in domestic and cross-border data flows. We encourage the adoption of these principles in various international forums, including the G20 Digital Economy Task Force Ministerial Declaration, in which the propositions of Indonesia have been widely supported. The ministerial declaration also incorporated the notion of data protection and privacy to complement the section of cross-border data flows that lacked the notion in the 2019 ministerial declaration. Besides, we are also prioritizing the legislation of ministerial decree on electronic system provider in the private sector, which is aimed to finish soon. The ministerial decree will also ensure that cloud services and user-generated content providers monitor their content from misuse and prohibited activities, as you might know. The passing of the decree will also align with our role as a supervisor, meaning that the government will provide control and oversee the data transfer, especially cross-border data flow and data processing mechanism. We will also ensure that the law is being enforced and bring legal proceedings against when there is a case of data breach and data leaks, of course. And third, as a regulator, supervisor, we are also an educator with all ecosystem, like from Gojek and many more companies in Indonesia. The government takes part in enhancing human capability and awareness in the digital field. The ministry realizes the urgent need for digital literacy to empower citizens and equip them with the knowledge needed to protect themselves and others from data privacy violations, if we are talking about data protection. Therefore, along with the national digital literacy movement called Cyberkreasi, we have initiated several programs using various approaches to educate internet users to encourage productive and, of course, safe internet usage by emphasizing basic digital protection education. Friends and colleagues, underlying our cause in the belief that data protection should be done at all costs in a synergized collaboration between the data owners, digital platforms, and the government. Such cooperation and coordination are much needed because we are now living in a data-driven world. where data contributes significantly to the ever increasing advancement of technology. Opposing views regarding how data protection should be accomplished may be apparent between parties. However, in order to uphold our nation's interests and respecting the privacy of our people, gaps must be diminished and bridges must be built. Therefore, we are from the Ministry of ICT calling on all participating stakeholders to join hands in bridging these gaps by conducting more intensified dialogues, specifically between the public sector, the private sector, and most importantly, the personal data owners. On a final note, let us all think forward with an agile mind to anticipate these rapid changes and realize a nation with a robust and exemplary digital ecosystem. Thank you so much, Mbak Afra and colleagues. I hope that we already share all policies related to the data protection in Indonesia, as well as the progress of the bill of data protection in the parliament. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Pak Dedy. So in summary, Pak Dedy has talked to us about the ministry's role in protecting citizens' personal data and admitting that although there are 3 existing laws and ministerial regulations that specifically handle about data protection and privacy, there are still limitations. And thus it is very urgent for the government to immediately pass the personal data protection bill into law, which is expected to be done soon this year. Yeah. And also Pak Dedy also talked about us about Indonesia's cooperation with other international parties to further address data privacy issues and those surrounding data breaches. And there's also a program within the ministry about digital literacy to encourage the public to also be aware of the security of their own data in the cyberspace. And lastly, the ministry also asserted its commitment to cooperate with all stakeholders in protecting citizens' personal data. Due to his schedule, Pak Dedy will only join us for 30 minutes today. And so since he has to leave in 15 minutes, we will going to have a brief Q&A session with him. We have selected 3 questions asked by our audiences specifically for Pak Dedy. So, Pak, the first question is that, what are the consequences for institutions or organizations who unlawfully get access to our personal data? There is this case that the practice of banks or some fintechs who employ debt collectors to recollect the debts by any means, no matter it is illegal or not. And then how strict the regulation on data protection bill when it comes to this issue? Can the bill give deterrent effects to those companies or institutions who violated customers' privacy? As we might know, Indonesia might not be a prime example when it comes to law enforcement in the field.
Yeah, thank you, Mbak Afra. A very good question. Thank you so much. Let me answer that question by emphasizing on 2 points. Yeah, Mbak. The first one related to our RUU PDP, Rancangan Undang-Undang Pelindungan Data Pribadi. Actually, we have clearly divided and defined the state of data owner, data controller, as well as data processor. In terms of data collection and data processing, the data controllers have to state the direct purpose and usage of the data to the owners in a consensual manner. This is very important. And we already clearly stated in our draft of the RUU PDP. All parties who will be included in the data control and process mechanism should also be clearly stated upfront. On the other hand, the data owners have the very rights to take out their data to be processed if there is a violation indication. Another thing related to our current draft bill is actually this bill has also stated the legal consequences of data violation. The enforcement of the data protection bill will also be overseen by so-called data protection authority. With such plans on implementing the data protection bill, we do hope that the occurrences relating to the data violation can be deterred, and personal data and data sovereignty will be fully protected. And the second point that I will make related to your question is actually related regulation. We already have several regulations related to this issue. Um, as far as we know, we at least have the Indonesian Central Bank Regulation number 14 of 2012 regarding financial transaction card policy. And the second one is the Indonesian Central Bank circulation letter number 11 of 20 or what we call as the SABI, Surat Edaran Bank Indonesia on financial transaction card policy. So by knowing those all regulations, I think the government is working very hard to be able to protect the data of our citizens. And so far, we already those all regulations so far, and we are trying to finish the draft bill of RUU PDB soon this year, as you mentioned earlier, and as I mentioned earlier as well. This may be my answer, Afra.
Okay, so the concerns that the question, it will be addressed in the bill, ya Pak ya?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, and then there's the second question about the Indonesian government imposes regulation requiring customers to submit family card and also ID card number to activate internet, call, and SMS services offered by telecommunication companies. Yet customers still reported receiving spams from unknown numbers. So how does actually the government regulate this and protect the privacy of smartphone users from this kind of illicit practices?
Yeah, that's also a very good question, because our people, you know, experience those kind of issues. Yeah, the policy of registering family card and local ID number to activate the internet, call, and SMS services actually aims to minimize and control any misuse and or criminals through cellular phone numbers, Mbak. Any personal data that we manage is safe, and until now there is no indication of any breach or leaks according to the confirmation from our partner PSSN. We always monitor and evaluate if there may be any potential data breach from another source. The Ministry of ICT has also collaborated with BRTI, Badan Regulasi Telekomunikasi Indonesia, in preparing a procedure to minimize and or block the distribution of spam SMS or calls. Regarding this issue, we have provided a system, Mbak, for everyone to report to any unwanted text or calls, and the report can be done through layanan.kominfo.go.id as well as aduankonten.go.id. Yeah, And you can also report this kind of issue by or via Twitter at Aduan PRTI. Once the report and the evidence is verified, PRTI will follow it up to the related cellular operators as evidence, as they are the ones who have the rights to block any cellular numbers. Basically, we are coordinating this kind of issue with PRTI as well as cellular operators. And maybe I want to add one more point, but on this issue. We always push and work together with cellular operators to monitor and evaluate the implementations and any violations regarding the issues of any, uh, you know, uh, practices such as spams, scams, and so on and so forth. So basically, that's what we are doing right now. And we believe that all channels that we have can serve our people and report any violations related to this issue through those channels.
So the system is already available for everyone to report these unwanted phone calls or messages. There's one through Kominfo website and can also be done too through Twitter ya Pak ya, the report.
Yep, correct.
And then the third question is related to the European Union-based General Data Protection Regulation.
Yeah.
The question is, how prepared is the Indonesian government or the Indonesian institutions when it comes to EU GDPR? And what are their impacts on Indonesia's trade, economy, and maybe tourism too, to some extent? Especially as GDPR applies to Indonesian business sectors offering goods, services to customers or businesses in the EU. And will the new data protection bill go hand in hand with the EU-based GDPR, which is also known as one of the strongest data privacy bill in the world?
Yeah, that's also a good and difficult question to be answered, ya, Mbak. um, Basically, the Indonesian GDPR derive several of its principles from the EU GDPR, Mbak. So EU GDPR is basically our benchmark to develop Indonesia GDPR. For example, the principle that I already mentioned in my speech before, the principles of lawfulness, fairness, and transparency. Those three principles actually are derived from the EU GDPR. As the Indonesia GDPR also focuses on at least 5 main aspects, as I already mentioned as well in the beginning of the speech, which are data collection, data processing, data security, data breach, and the right to be forgotten. These aspects are also comprehensively covered in the EU GDPR. So basically, we have a very strong connection with the EU GDPR because the principles as well as the aspects of Indonesian GDPR basically derive from the EU GDPR. Another point is actually related to the Indonesia GDPR, which will also cover cross-border data flows with the principle of reciprocity, which states that under the law, a data controller in Indonesia may transfer personal data to an offshore data controller provided that one, the jurisdiction of the offshore data controller or international organization receiving the transfer data has an equal or higher level of personal data protection as the Indonesian GDPR. That's very important. That's why we have this principle, the principle of reciprocity. The second one is actually there is an international agreement or bilateral agreement between Indonesia and that country. The third one, Mbak, there is an agreement between Indonesia, the Indonesian and offshore data controllers containing personal data protection standards. And the last one is actually the personal data owner has consented the transfer. So by knowing those all principles, actually we have many similarities. If we compare our draft of GDPR or Rancangan Undang-Undang Pelindungan Data Pribadi with the EU GDPR.
So in this case, EU GDPR is the benchmark of Indonesia's own GDPR, and then which is Indonesia GDPR also covering cross-border data flows with reciprocity principle, and we also asserted the principle of consent in the transfer of data.
Correct, Mbak.
Okay. And so with the last question answered, now Pak Dedy unfortunately has to leave this webinar. Pak Dedy, thank you so much for having given us with new insights today. Maybe if you're still available, can we take a picture together? All
right.
Screen capture. Okay. Counting? Okay. 1, 2, 3. Okay. Thank you so much, Pak Dedy, for your appearance today in our webinar. So when we talk about digital platforms, data protection, and cyberspace in general, of course, we cannot forget about Google in this matter, especially since we regularly use the platform, which is also its search engines and services. And of course, many of us also have our data registered with Google to some extent. So to further explain about what Google has done and its policy regarding the protection of users' personal data and other matters, here we have Carmela Acevedo. She is a senior software engineer at Google Safety Engineering Center based in Munich. Carmela, it's really nice to see you here.
Hi, nice to see you. Thanks for having me.
Hi, what time is it there in Munich?
It's 11:30 in the morning. Right.
Okay, it's now cloudy afternoon here in Jakarta.
I
previously read a story in Google, which is pretty interesting about how Google Munich actually is a global leader in data privacy. Will you also tell us about that today?
Yes, I'll tell you some more. I'm here in Munich and we build a lot of tools, and let me tell you a little bit about them. I'm having a little bit of technical difficulties. Start share. Do you see my screen?
Yeah, maybe you can click it so that will be. All right, the floor is yours, Carmela.
All right, one more second. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really happy to be able to share a little bit more about what Google does to keep your data safe. So I'm Carmela Acevedo. I'm a senior software engineer in the Google office in Munich in the Google Safety Engineering Center. I lead a team in an area that we called user-facing privacy. So we build tools to make sure that people know more about their privacy and can take control over their data. So my team specifically, for example, builds the privacy checkup, and we work closely with teams like Chrome and the Password Manager, which are also in Munich, and we collaborate closely. And I'll tell you a little bit more about what they do during the presentation. So the Google Safety Engineering Center is a global headquarters for safety engineering, and it's a long-term investment of resources and people who are dedicated to build the internet guardrails of the future. So GSEC is where we design, test, and build privacy features and technology. We've invested in 200 engineers that work in privacy and safety topics, and we have more than 10 years experience in building data controls for users, not only for users in Europe, but users all over the world. I remember when I joined the team 4 years ago, we were only like 50 people, and we've really grown a lot. It's been really exciting to see all the people that have joined in the past few years. And in fact, we do a lot of research all across the world in various countries, including Indonesia, where we go and meet actual users who are actually using our products. And we ask them what their concerns are and what they think about their privacy and security, so that then we can build our products with them in mind, because we know that people are different. So our approach to privacy and security is similar to our overall approach as a company. We build products that are simple and helpful for everyone. So when it comes to privacy and security, we know that controlling your data should be simple and easy to understand, so you can make privacy choices that are right for you. So to build these products, we focus on 3 principles: built-in automatic protection, personalized tools and guidance, and advancing online security for all. So our built-in security automatically detects alerts and protects you from a wide range of security threats. Our services are protected by one of the world's most advanced security infrastructures. This built-in security detects and protects online threats so that you can be confident your personal information is secure. One second, let me make sure that the slides are working. There we go. All right, sorry. So we design our products and services with advanced security at their core. From our custom-built infrastructure that protects data centers and servers, to layers of advanced encryption that protect user data from Chrome and Gmail. Encryption brings a higher level of security and privacy to our services. When you send an email or share a funny video with a friend, or maybe you visit a website or store your photos, that data goes between your device, to Google services, and to our data centers. And we protect this data with multiple layers of security, including leading encryption technology such as HTTPS, which you've probably heard about, and transport layer security. We design security protections that continuously watch out for risks and automatically block a wide range of security threats from ever impacting our users. For instance, many malware and phishing attacks actually start with an email. So Gmail protects you from spam and phishing and malware better than any other email service. So we use machine learning and artificial intelligence, and Gmail analyzes patterns in billions of messages to identify characteristics of these emails that users have marked as spam. And then they use these markers to block 99.9% of suspicious or dangerous emails before they ever reach you. Also, we block billions of bad ads. On average, we block 100 bad ads per second. So you're better protected as you browse the internet. Another important feature is the Play Protect, which is built into your Android device and continuously works behind the scenes to keep your device, data, and apps safe. We scan your apps before, during, and after you download, regardless of where you've downloaded them from. When we detect something we think you need to know about, such as a suspicious sign-in on your Google account or a risky attachment, we'll proactively notify you so you can quickly take action. For example, on Gmail, we'll warn you before you download an attachment that could put your security at risk. If someone logs into your account from a device that is not associated with you, we'll also notify you. And when we detect something suspicious in your account, we'll send you a notification to your inbox or phone so that you can protect your account with one click. I know that sometimes I log into computers from my friends because I want to quickly check something, and I'll get an email telling me, oh, you logged into this account, into this phone, in this place. And that really helps me feel safe, because I know that if somebody else would do this that I have not allowed to do, I would find out about it, and I could go to my Google account and check the security risk, and even take the security checkup to make sure that they don't have access to my account anymore. We also build personalized tools and guidance for our users. So we want to make easy to use tools to help you manage your online security. We also proactively share individual guidance that helps users around the world stay safer online. We provide powerful step-by-step tools like the security and the password checkup to help you strengthen your Google account security and address issues in minutes. So if you haven't done so yet, I really encourage you to try all of them. You can go to g.co/security checkup or g.co/privacy checkup. And in the security checkup, we recently added the password checkup as well, which I also really encourage you to take, because passwords are very important nowadays. And you can check, for example, if your password has been leaked or if you have the same password used in multiple services. This is really important to stay safe online. So I also know that passwords are really challenging. I can't remember all of my passwords. It's become really, really hard to manage. So I really rely on the password checkup to suggest strong passwords, because I was using the same password for everything. And I know that that's really not safe. So they suggest a strong password, and then I don't really have to remember it myself anymore. But we also know that not all users have the same level of risk. Some may need greater account security to act against elevated online threats or targeted attacks. That's why we've always built in options for making your account more secure, like two-step verification. Google was the first major internet company to offer this feature to all of its users. In 2017, we launched our Advanced Protection Program, which is Google's strongest account security. The program protects anyone who might be vulnerable to sophisticated digital attacks, such as politicians, campaign teams, journalists, activists, and business leaders. We believe also that education is a crucial aspect of security. So we actively share tips and guidance that help teach users around the world about security best practices. Google's dedicated outreach teams run global safety trainings programs designed to help users keep themselves online, safe online. The team reaches millions of people per year through a variety of online safety resources and in-person events and workshops. For example, we have multiple education outreach programs, and partnerships are really key to our education efforts. We've run several campaigns in Indonesia already in partnership with local government and nonprofit organizations to spread the word about online safety. So Protect Your Privacy is a campaign to educate on the importance of protecting privacy, and Be Internet Awesome was a local version of our global online safety campaign for kids. Oops. All right, so I also wanted to tell you a little bit more of what we do and the tools that we're building so that people can take control of their privacy online. This is something that me and my team actually work on every day. They're the tools that we've built, and we're really excited to share them with you. So we know that one size does not fit all when it comes to privacy. Something that I'm concerned about may not be the same thing that you're concerned about. So we build powerful, easy to use privacy tools into your Google account. They give you control over the privacy settings that are right for you and what types of data we collect and use across our services. So the first one is the Google account, which we launched in 2015, and it provides a single place for users to review and understand their account settings. And it's really exciting because we work on this, so it's really nice to show it to you, and it's really used extensively. In 2017, nearly 2 billion people used the Google account, and the majority of them made changes and adjustments to their privacy settings, which demonstrates that not only are users aware that these settings exist, but they're making informed choices. And it's also important to note that more than 50% of people that go to the Google account do so from mobile devices, and we really make sure that these pages are optimized for mobile usage as well. The next one is My Account, My Activity, which is part of the Google account. And if you have the relevant settings on, data will be stored into your account. And then you can look at all of this information in My Activity. So if you have, for example, the browser history or your search history, you can look into it in My Activity, and you can also delete all of it or part of it in My Activity as well. Last year, we announced the auto delete feature for web and app activity and location history. And this year, we actually made it on by default when you turn these settings on. So this means that you can choose for how long this data is stored. 6, 18 months, or indefinitely, if that's what you prefer. So we know that people have different preferences, so we wanted to offer a wide range of options. And, oops, one less. So we want to protect our users whenever they're online. This means strengthening the security of the entire internet, not just for Google products and services. We create some of the world's strongest security technology and share this technology openly for others to adopt as well. As we develop and adopt stronger protections within our products, we actively help and encourage others in the industry to adopt the same technologies to strengthen and security to strengthen security across the industry. Google has always been a leader in creating and adopting stronger sign-in and authentication standards. One such partnership was with the nonprofit organization FIDO Alliance, which works to set and deploy new standards that help companies ensure secure account access for their employees. Google has a long history of releasing free, open source technologies for others to adopt. We had safe browsing, which has been one of our biggest successes. When we developed the Chrome browser in 2008, we created safe browsing technology to warn users before they visit an unsafe site. And to help the site owners quickly address this issue, we also alert them and provide free tools. We then made safe browsing services available to everyone, competitors and partners alike, to build into their own browsers. And today, safe browsing protects 4 billion devices. That's over half of the connected devices in the world. We believe that a lot of good and innovation can come from collaborating with others. As part of our vulnerability reward program, Google awards millions of dollars every year to independent security researchers who identify bugs in our services, products, and open source software, so we can quickly fix them and keep our users' data secure. Our internal researchers also collaborate directly with academia, industry groups, and non-governmental organizations to advance the state of security, privacy, and anti-abuse research. And we also recently open sourced our differential privacy libraries so that other developers can also use them, and then more of users' privacy is protected. So to recap, when it comes to privacy and security, we're focused on building protection into everything we make, providing tools, controls, and education to help you stay safe online, and collaborating to strengthen security across the internet. Google was founded on the belief that everything we do should always respect the user. As the internet evolves, this means continuously advancing our security technologies and privacy tools to keep you and your family safe online. That's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Carmela. So just to wrap up about the talking points of from Google is that Google has actually built in a security detect alerts that protect users from threats against our personal data and privacy in all of its products, including Gmail, in Chrome. And Google also has multiple layers of security, and it has also provided us with options to adjust our own data safety and privacy settings, which we can access in our Google account, right? And then as a company, it has also partnered with local government, including in Indonesia, in launching programs to educate consumers and users about protecting their own privacy.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you so much, Carmela. And for our next speaker here, we have Mbak Shinto Nugroho, the Chief of Public Policy and Government Relations of Gojek, a super app which many of us have, of course, used regularly to order ride, foods, even for payment through its GoPay. Hello, Mbak Shinto. How are you doing this afternoon?
How are you?
I'm fine. Thank you for asking. Gojek is, of course, no stranger for us, but I believe many of us here are wondering about how the country's first decacorn ensure the safety of its users' personal data and confidential information. So, Mbak Shinto, I heard Gojek also has a campaign regarding data protection and privacy of its consumers too?
Yes, indeed. We put a very high premium on the personal data protections, and we understand that user use us and use our products and conveniently use our products and has been a loyal users because of the data protections and the safety that we provided towards them.
Okay.
And my presentation today is going to be focusing on those as well.
All right. So without further ado, Mbak Shinto, you have 15 minutes.
All right, let's do this. So the personal data, today my presentation will focus on the personal data protections in relation to the rise of the digital platform. This presentation is going to be divided into two. One side, I'll be talking a little bit on the internet as the Indonesia lifestyle, the penetration of internet in Indonesia, as well as touching a little bit on the personal data protections and the PDP law from the business perspective. I believe my colleague, Mas Wahyudi from ELSAM will be talking more about this. And then the second part of my presentation will be focusing on what we do as Mbak Marguerite, Afra just pointed out, what Gojek has been doing and will be continually doing to innovate on this space. And as you know, the internet as Indonesia society lifestyle and the digital transformations is definitely inevitable. The numbers is actually quite staggering. With the populations of 272 millions, the active internet user is actually 175.4 million. And the numbers is continue increasing. Now, the active social media user is actually 160 million, meaning, only 15 millions of these active internet users that's not using social media. That's a very, very small number. Now, and if we look into the size of the Indonesia internet economy by 2025, it's predicted to reach 130 billion. And I'm sure Carmela would totally agree with this, because this is actually taken from a Google report. For Gojek itself, the pandemic is unprecedented, and it's a situation that is very saddening and maddening for all of us. However, it is also, for every situation, there's two sides of the coins. And one side of the coins, the pandemic has been functioning as a catalyst for digital adoption. From edu tech to health tech to those that requires years of adoptions, now has become the new normal. This webinar, for example, that was very difficult previously. Now we have 286 participants online, and many more watching on Jakarta Post YouTube channel. The fact that this series has been on the 7th series, and it's always been one of the series or one of the webinars that most people goes to because of the quality of the webinar itself, thanks to Jakarta Post, has shown that the digital adoptions actually increases exponentially during the pandemic. Now, from our product side, from GoFood, we've expanded from only ready to eat to now including ready to cook as well as groceries. Transactions increases multifold, 3x, but the numbers is growing exponentially. The online events increases by 32x, and even by Google standards, I think this number is quite staggering. The GoSend order, and we're just talking about during a specific month, and it increases by 90%, and it hasn't gone down since. On transactions in GoMet, for example, as I mentioned, we started talking about health tech increase 103%, and those are just some of the big numbers. But what we've seen here is that internet and apps and using a digital platform as a way to get through life has been an indisputable part of what is a new normal. Next one. However, interestingly, out of these 775 million people, the key things, and we did a research on this, and together with UGM, with the CFDS, on the what we call the survey on the competency on digital cybersecurity, and we found out that most of the Indonesian digital literacy level is actually between basic and intermediate. And folks, we're talking about 165 million people here. And Indonesia is actually ranked 56 out of 63. So, we're top 10 from the bottom in a global world digital competitiveness index, which is, one of the factors is actually digital literacy or knowledge. So we have a long way of increasing the basic, the digital literacy or knowledge from, from those that have the basic knowledge to intermediate, and hopefully from those that's, intermediate, have intermediate knowledge as we speak, moving on to advanced. Moving on to the next one. Now, and this is where having a robust and comprehensive data protection law for sustainable internet economic growth is important. It's not something we can compromise, especially in Indonesia. And I'm glad that, the Indonesian government is also taking a pivotal role, a really good role, a strong role on this. And however, there are, certain principles. I would say there's 3 key principles. One, what we call the standards or codification, which means it has to adhere to a certain unified standards in the industry. And then we say the industry, it has to be a standards that is applicable across the industry, across the globe, being the foundations of customers and partner trust, and also for the industry players. So, setting up a standards that is so different than the rest of the world is not going to work. It's not going to work for Indonesia. It's not going to work for internet users in Indonesia. It's not going to work for Indonesia, a company like us. Because as you know, we started already expanding to other countries in Southeast Asia. And once Indonesia start doing that, then there would be, different blocks. And this thing is better kept, free flow. But with a clear regulatory framework, which is the second point, the flexibility point, which is the policymaker in doing so need to consider different business models and sizes when drafting the law. Let's not make the law be another burden or impediments for SMB or small medium businesses. It should be providing the stimulus and the jolt for the startups and the SMEs. And how to do so is by communicating with business, having a public-private discussion, but also, engaging with, NGOs, research agency, academicians, because what everyone wants is for Indonesia, with such a huge internet user base, and we would only grow, an effective, enforceable, and supportive for the growth of the digital economy ecosystem. Next. Now, on this, there are some considerations or recommendations from the industry that we have tabled forward. And then this is also something that Mas Dedy actually mentioned earlier on. Specifically, for example, a specific personal data and explicit consents, which are still not aligned with the international practices. And this is leading up to point number 1 that I mentioned. It has to be there. It has to adhere to an international standard, because that would be really helpful for even Indonesian startups or Indonesian SMEs. And second, on the policy making, encouraging a thorough survey and research in getting the sanctionable requirements for data controller. For example, the standards and timeline in fulfillment data subject needs to be done in a way that is makes sense for the industry. And lastly, because we're 56 out of 63, then a continuous education and public consultancy and sufficient transition prior to the implementations of the law is actually very key. Now, what have we done as part of the industry? We launched, we continuously investing and innovating on safety with Gojek. There are several stuff that we do, for example, and we launch. We have been doing this, since the beginning of Gojek inception, but lately, we amp it up even more, and we work very closely also with Kominfo on this and Cyber Kreasi, which Pak Dedy also mentioned, to make sure that there is these 3 pillars. That would always have to be everywhere, which is the education pillars, the protection pillars, and how we use technology to make sure the education and the protections is ongoing and continuous. Next one. How do we do that? And we place, a strong emphasis on the education pillars. We did a data protection seminars roadshow. Some of it is actually, have to be scaled back because of COVID. But then, we put it back. I think we've done the roadshow along with Cominfo, CFDS, as well as actually some parliamentarian, because it is important to educate them as well on data protections. And we've done in top cities of Indonesia. And because 165 millions of out of the 175 millions are actually social media users, we put it very strongly on the social media content. We remind them to always keep their OTP secret. We let them know, the modus and, the models that they use, of fraudster. We make sure that, you have to have your PIN number in, you have to change your password, and, one account, one cell phone. Not one account, not 3 accounts, one account, one cell phone. And that is part of, keeping it safe. Next one. Now, on the technology pillars, because we're a technology company, first and foremost, we have the number masking. So for example, right now, if you order GoFood and your driver actually calls you, you would only see, the callers from Gojek. You won't be able to see, your driver's number, as well as he or she won't be able to see your number. The same thing if you are taking one of our transport products. And this is also one of the reasons why we always remind them through the intervention chat, in which we said, thank you for using Gojek. Please make sure that if somebody asks you to transfer money, do not do that. This transaction is going to be deducted from your GoPay after it is completed. Remind them that, please do all the chat within the apps. Do not use, other chat applications to use this, because you're not protected. If you do the chat within the Gojek app, the driver, the sellers, everyone in the ecosystem that interacted with you won't be able to see your number. Likewise, so it protects both ways. We also have the share trip features, which means, you can share with your relatives, parents, significant others, where you are exactly at that particular moment. There's also an emergency button. This is especially for rides, where you can just push the emergency button. This also works both ways, because bad people are bad people. Bad people can be user, bad people can be part of the ecosystem, can be our partner mitra. And we also let you know of the psychological manipulations fraud detector with our AI. And we work very closely with Google on this as well. We were able to actually detect if fraud is happening. For example, I'm going to call you, but not from this number that I'm using right now, because my units is running out, or pulsa saya sudah habis. So I'm going to call you from my brother's number, and my brother's numbers is XYZ. And we, our system immediately would pick that one up, and it would say we have a strong indication that fraud is ongoing. Please be very aware. Do not share your OTP. Do not do any chat outside the chat system that we have here to keep yourself safe. So those are some of the stuff that we do, and we are continuously improving on this because the importance of this for both our users as well as for our merchants and ecosystem partner. Next one. Yep. And not only that, we for GoPay, we have a guaranteed GoPay balance. If you know, if really unfortunate things happens to you, we know musibah happens. We also have super partners now, which is the services from reliable and trusted partners. What does it mean is if you right now, order GoFood, for example, and you say, yes, we're confirming with the restaurants. That means that restaurants is already our super partner. What that means is, the driver actually doesn't have to carry money. So if your driver said, you need to transfer money to me, that's bogus. Because the driver only have to show the QR code and that's it. Things are proceeding directly from your GoPay to your merchant account. And we also have insurance protections for our transactions. I think that's all from us, and I'm looking forward to the Q&A session.
Thank you so much, Ms. Shinto, for explanation. So to wrap up about her presentation a little bit, I'm going to say that Ms. Shinto asserted the urgency of data protection law to be passed soon, but with this regards, she reminded the government to consider the size and the kinds of businesses when drafting the law. So there is a kind of flexibility, but also ensuring robust protection for citizens' data protection. And Gojek actually also has campaign called Safe with Gojek, which is also collaborated with the government to educate users and drivers related to data protection. It has also technology to protect users and drivers' privacy with number masking and also artificial intelligence to detect indication of fraud that will alert users immediately. So companies' responsibility in the protecting consumers' personal data is expected to be one of the key points included in the Personal Data Protection Bill. But what exactly does the current draft bill regulate, and will it become the most comprehensive regulatory framework to address issues surrounding data breach in Indonesia? The one who will answer these questions is Mas Wahyudi Djafar, the research director of ELSAM, a think tank which has also published studies that scrutinize the content of Personal Data Protection Bill. Hello, Mas Wahyu. Thanks for joining us here.
Hello, Afra. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's our pleasure. So, Mas, I have read ELSAM analysis regarding the current draft of the Data Protection Bill. And while there are some good provisions, there are also some issues that have yet to be addressed in the bill, such as the absence of Data Protection Authority, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so to further talk about the key points and problems of the current draft bill, here we have Mas Wahyudi. Mas Wahyudi, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you, Mbak Afra. Good afternoon, everyone, distinguished participant and honorable research person. And thank you for Jakarta Post for having me. I will continuing the presentation from Mbak Shinto and also Mas Dedy. And I will present my... Okay. Okay, I will try to elaborate several things related to the landscape of personal data protection law in Indonesia for the first, and emerging problems as consequence of situation of existing personal data protection regulation, and several notes on the material of personal data protection bill currently deliberated in the House of Representatives. Personal data protection as a part of right to privacy is a part of citizen constitutional right in Indonesia, guaranteed by the provision of Article 28G, paragraph 1 in the Indonesian Constitution. And however, the absence of adequate definition of scope of privacy resulted in the difficulties of formulating of the concept of personal data protection. Even if we follow the process in the Indonesian court, including the constitutional court, it is difficult to get the jurisprudence, particularly related to privacy, except the debates on communication interception. But does personal data protection exist in Indonesia? In the beginning, Mbak Afra mentioned about the 30 regulation or 30 legislation in Indonesia related to the data protection. In our study at ELSAM, at least we found 33 Indonesian laws, of which content addressed personal data. Uh, whether it is a guarantee of personal data protection, for example, from the Human Rights Act, and also authority to process personal data for certain authority, or the obligation to protect personal data. Those diverse laws spread in various sectors, such as the telecommunication and information, the population of administration, health services, finance, banking and taxation, commerce, industry, and law enforcement and security. In the telecommunication and information sector, we can identify it in telecommunication law, law number 36 on 1919, and also electronic information and transaction law, public information law, and archiving law. While in the population administration, it is specifically regulated on population administration law, number 24 on 2006, and amended by the law number 24 on 2013. In health service, whether it is health law, health practice law, or medical practice law, hospital law, and health staff law, they all emphasize the obligation of protecting the patient personal data. For example, the issue during the COVID-19 about the data patient, it is related with the health data protection. Even if we talk about the finance sector, banking, and taxation, a number of laws closely related to the data protection, such as banking law, Bank of Indonesia law, or central bank law, Sharia bank law, financial service authority law, up to the law on tax information. And the next, in the commerce and industry sectors, we can specifically refer to commerce law, consumer protection law, and company document law. While in the context of law enforcement and security, the material focuses more on the authority of law and security enforcement officers to conduct data mining and processing using those two reasons. We can find the regulation in state intelligence law, terrorism eradication law, money laundering eradication law, and many others related to the criminals enforcement and also national security enforcement. Uh, Other those law, government has also passed various regulation on data protection. Pak Dedy mentioned at the beginning of the session, starting from government regulation numbers 21 on 2019 on electronic system and transaction implementation, and also the government regulation number 80 on 2019 on e-commerce, and also the specific regulation released by Ministry of Communication and Informatics with the Permenkominfo number 20 2016 on personal data protection in electronic system, and also various regulation issued by Bank Indonesia, Financial Service Authority (OJK) ya, Health Ministry, and also Ministry of Trade. Unfortunately, most of those various rules and regulation have not been in line with the principles of data protection and overlapping one another, so that the uncertain situation of data protection law emerges in Indonesia. There is no adequate definition of personal data in those rules and regulation. Uncertain regulation and data controller and processors, including their obligation. There is no guarantee of protection of the right of data subject or data owners, and the adequate mechanism for dispute solution if the data protection files or the data breach incident. For example, in population administrative law, what is called as personal data, which has to be protected, only refers to sensitive personal data. while other population data, which is conceptually included in personal data or in the scope of personal data, are not defined as a personal data in administrative population law. Meanwhile, in the government regulation number 71 on 2019, only regulates the obligation of the provider of electronic system, not specifically defined as a data controller or a data processor, while in the context of data protection failure, Permenkominfo number 20/2016 limits the notification obligation for the platform provider up to 14 days, which obviously opposes the principle of without undue delay mentioned by EU GDPR, for example, adding to absence of adequate settlement mechanism. Since there is clarity in data protection regulation binding all at platform, it has been the major cause of uncertainty of data protection in Indonesia. In addition to the low public awareness to protect personal data. To give a picture of it, in various cases of personal data leak, we never arrive at the point of solution to ensure the same incident never occur. The data subject also find it hard to strive for their rights as the Article 26 the ITL law, because the article only mentioned that if someone is harmed as an effect to personal data violation, they can claim a compensation through the civil court. But the process of verification, the process of evidence will be hard because the data subject must prove the personal data leaked by themselves because in Indonesian civil law, it applies the Hoover postulates principles. He is the one who must prove the evidence. Other than that, the result of ELSAM study on the obedience of digital platform to principles of right to privacy protection has found that one of the reasons why the platform has not completed their privacy policy and term of services is that there has not been sufficient law reference because there is no comprehensive data protection law. Such situation will affect the public trust to the digital platforms, especially the Indonesian base, as their privacy policy is under the standard of foreign digital platform, which involuntarily subjects to the law of its origin of the company or the origin of digital platform. That's why, departing from various fundamental problems above, the comprehensive personal data protection law is significantly important for Indonesia. And then now about the material of personal data protection bill, which is the currently discussed in the House. In general, personal data protection bill has actually adopted almost all the key principle of data protection. Or Mas Dedy also mentioned adopt from EU General Data Protection Regulation, starting from the definition, legal ground of processing, scope of processing, the right of data subject, the obligation of data controller and processor, up to the mechanism of international data transfer. However, there are a number of notes, the material of the bill, which can be identified as the following. I have the 10 notes related with the data protection bill. The first related to the definition and type of personal data. As seen from its definition, it has accommodated the approach utilized by the EU GDPR in the Article 4. However, the problem lies the data categorization or the type of data personnel, such as particularly given limitation on personal data, which is general and potentially limits its scope of personal data, and determines the list of type of personal data which is specific or sensitive data. The government includes the children's data, financial data, and criminal record as a sensitive data, while data regarding religion or beliefs or philosophical beliefs is not categorized as a sensitive data in Indonesia, even though the discrimination based on the religion or philosophical beliefs is the big or major problem in Indonesia currently. Second, related to the material scope and territorial scope, specified in the provision of Article 2, regarding the material scope, there is a problem as in there is no clarity in the exception of processing for household data conducted by the natural person or those for household purposes done by a person or individual. As a result, it will be interpreted then that when one is processing data on household, he or she is also obligated as the data controller, even though they are as a natural person or individual. Such unclarity relates with the recommendation for the draft of criminal sanction to be sentenced to the natural person, individual, or legal person, or corporation. Meanwhile, the territorial scope is already accommodated to the model applied by the EU General Data Protection Regulation. Next, related to the personal data processing, relevant to the principles of personal data processing has fully accommodated the principle specific in EU General Data Protection Regulation. However, it needs adjustment in the drafting in order to adopt with the format of Indonesian rules and regulation. The notable problem is found in the legal basis of personal data processing, which tends to still focus on consent or persetujuan, ya, will other legal ground, which tend to still focus on consent, and in the legal ground of processing, legal basis have not well formulated. Moreover, there are still any problem with the formulating the legal basis of the consent. For example, the requirement for consent in written form. Other than that, there is an error in adopting the legal basis of vital interest, considered as similar to legitimate interest. It is the difference of the legal basis between the vital interest and legitimate interest. And furthermore, there is no adequate limitation and exception for the legal basis of personal data processing. For example, the explanation and limitation of the use of legal basis for public interest and legitimate interest. Personal Data Protection Bill has not specifically regulated the requirement for processing sensitive data, which implies the sensitive data can be processed similarly as general personal data. Other than that, the requirement for processing the children's data or the protection of minors in the EU General Data Protection Regulation has not been regulated yet, and such data, on the other hand, is qualified as sensitive data. Meanwhile, in the chapter of processing, the use of audiovisual surveillance or CCTV camera is problematic as there is no clarity in the regulating the material scope, as mentioned before. And the next, regarding the protection of the right of data subject, there are also several problems. The first fundamental problem relevant to the right of data subject specified in Personal Data Protection Bill is the use of terminology of data owner, which is conceptually different from data subject. In simple way, the data subject is everyone who personal data is collected, held, or processed. The term of use of data subject is different from data owner, as the data subject refers to the control on the data which identifies or identified as attached to certain individual. Meanwhile, the data owner refers to more on the control over the data, which does not specifically identify a certain individual. The different concept between the data subject and the data owner, also the base about the differences between the data protection regime and also the IPR's regime, or what is IPR law. It is different with the data protection regime. Manuel, related to the right of data subjects, several notes regarding the personal data protection bill are the emergence of rights to complete the data before processing, which result in the ambiguity with the right to rectify, the right to rectification as part of the data subject, the ambiguity with the formulation between the right to information and right to access, which raise question on the difference between these two, problem related to the requirement in erasure and destruction of the data, because in Indonesian bill, the bill what is give the difference formulation between the right to erasure and right to destruction in the different concept, and the unclear requirements on the deletion relevant to the execution of the right to be forgotten. So there is no specific article related to the right to be forgotten, because the article just mentioned about the right to erasure and destruction. Personal Data Protection Bill has not specifically the right of subject data relevant to the profiling and automatic decision making. Those two things, profiling and automatic decision making, will only be the part of the right to object and not the tightly regulate and animators on profiling and legal impact of the automatic decision making. On the other hand, the bill specifies the right to choose and method of processing, such as anonymous or pseudonym, which all related to the obligation of data controller to apply the drug security standard in the protection. So it is different between the right to choose of the method of the data processing, because the method of data processing, it is a part of the data controller to choose or to use of the pseudonymization or anonymization and use of the encryption method in the data processing.
Mas Wahyu, sorry to interrupt, but the time is running out and you may want to immediately conclude your presentation.
Okay, yeah.
Thank you.
And the another notes, it is related with the clarity to obligation of data controller and processor, the mechanism of international data transfer, the absence of data protection authority, formulated exception, which is too broad and confusing, formulation of code and conduct and clarity of certification mechanism, and formulation of sanction, administrative sanction, or administrative sentences, etc. For the last presentation for me, the following several notes on the mentioned problems, ELSAM has submitted the alternative draft recommendation in the form of problem inventory list to the House, in which we provide detailed notes in each article of the bill and propose revision. We expect that the process in the House will produce a meaningful personal data protection law, which can guarantee the rights of subject data and support the development of the technology innovation and digital economy in Indonesia, as affirmed in the sociological consideration at the bill. And this is my introduction for this discussion, and thank you, Mbak Afra.
Thank you, Mas Wahyu, for the presentation this afternoon. So to wrap up Mas Wahyu's presentation, ELSAM study has found that one of the reasons why some digital platforms in Indonesia have yet to create comprehensive privacy policies because there is no adequate law today to refer to due to the absence of comprehensive personal data protection law. And there's the uncertainty of data protection in Indonesia due to overlapping regulations. As Mas Wahyu said, there are 33 different laws and regulations that deal with personal data. And there is also low public awareness to protect their personal data in the cyberspace. And with regards to the personal data protection bill, although it already adopts points from EU GDPR, it needs adjustment to adapt with Indonesia's existing laws and regulations. Some problems that ELSAM highlighted in the bill included the absence of data protection authority, the absence of specific requirement for processing sensitive data that include financial and medical records, for instance, as well as lack of clarity of the obligation of data controller and processor in this matter. And ELSAM has also submitted the problems they found in the bill to the House and expect the latter to deliberate further to ensure that the bill will be comprehensive at the end. So now that all of our speakers have given us their insights over the topic of our discussion today, we are now going into the Q&A session. I'm going to give back the floor to Apriza, who will handle the selection of questions from our participants.
All right, thank you, Mbak Afra. Actually, have received so many questions through the Q&A box. We have more than 50 questions actually, and I've selected some of them to be answered by our speakers today. So, for the first questions, it is actually for Pak Dedy, but since he has something else to do, I will just pass it to other speakers. So the first question is about the urgency of the government Indonesia to have an independent body to monitor and govern privacy regulations, such as maybe a privacy commission, because now we have already had corruption eradication commission and human rights commission. Maybe the speakers want to give some insight regarding this idea. Maybe Mas Wahyudi want to start first. Should we have such institution in Indonesia?
Okay. The issue of the data protection authority or independent supervisory authority, it is the importance, the ones of the importance to what is as a importance requirement or principles to adequacy of the personal data protection law, because if the requirement to conduct of the international data transfer, the one of the issue related with the existing of data protection authority or independent supervisory authority. And based on the law, based on the bill in Indonesia, there is no formulation about the establishment of data protection authority. So I think, in the deliberation process in the parliament, we need to establishment of the data protection authority, including the statement of independency of data protection authority, the structure, the commissioner's appointment, text, function, and the authority. It is similar with the situation in Singapore, Malaysia, or Philippines, or the last developing in Thailand. The bill specifics that the oversight in implementing the law will be conducted by government from the Ministry of Communication in the draft bill. Meanwhile, the existence of data protection authority is a missing puzzle piece which determines the equality of Indonesian personal data protection law with other nations, especially the EU, especially the EU GDPR. Moreover, the law is not only applicable for the private sector, but also to the public sector. That's why the existence of independent supervisory authority is so important and required in the deliberation and formulation of personal data in Indonesia. Because the law applicable to the public body, not only to the private sectors. I think it is the suggest from us.
Okay, thank you, Mas Wahyu. I hope our lawmakers at the House of Representatives listen to your idea as well. Maybe Mbak Shinto want to add something about regarding this question?
Yes, definitely. I mean, we're a big favor of having an independent committee for data protection, for the data authority. I think it's really important and given the importance of data for everyday's life of Indonesian citizens, I think it's very important that an independent independent authority is actually being established. I believe the government is quite receptive to this idea. And even when we had a hearing between the industry and lawmakers in this regard, the parliamentarians, they're actually also quite open to the idea. And I think it's really, really important. And it's also part of, us being a democratic country. So fully on board with Mas Wahyudi.
Okay, thank you, Mbak Sinto and Mas Wahyudi for the answer. Okay, we're moving on to the next question. Unlike many countries, Indonesia is one of the few countries that use imprisonment sanction. Do the speakers think that Indonesia should keep this in the law, or maybe not? Maybe Mas Wahyu want to start?
Yeah, related to sanction, personal data protection bill specifies several layers of sanctions, starting from the administrative sanction, administrative fine, awarding compensation, up to criminal sanction, yeah, prison and fine. The emergence of formulated criminal sanction is also completed by the chapter regarding the prohibition of personal data use, such as prohibition of disclosures, illegal access, illegal changing, data threat, except data minimization, data monetization, will be sanctioned from fine up to prison. Yeah. Meanwhile, several prohibitions have actually been regulated in law on electronic information and transaction law. So, on our recommendation, we endorse the House to revoke all of the criminal sanction in the bill, because we can use all of the criminal article related to cybercrime in the information and electronic transaction law. Because the information and electronic transaction law, the chapter of the cybercrime, they are also adopt from the Budapest Convention on Cybercrime. So I think we can use of the existing law on cybercrime without the news, the offense in the data protection law.
Okay, Mas Wahyu, thank you for the answer. For Carmela and Mbak Shinto, what do you think about imprisonment sanctions regarding to the personal data violations? Because it is not regulated in the GDPR, right?
Yes, so we're from business, and from business we want to keep it simple, and we want top-notch security, and we want top-notch protection, and we want to be able to innovate to the best that we can and to the best that our technology allows, and more, to ensure the safety and the protections of our users and everyone that is and our partners and everyone that is in our ecosystem. So that's number one. And second, we want to be able to continue growing in Indonesia and beyond. And I'm sure a lot of startups in Indonesia wants to continue growing. And Indonesia itself, the startups landscape is very robust. Some of the breaches that's being depicted, that's already in there, are actually already been regulated in other laws. So why doing it double? Why not keeping it simple? But keeping it simple, but quality, and ensure that the market actually works, that the implementations actually works. That actually works much better than putting a sanction or criminal sanction, but without a teeth. Criminal sanction should be the ultimum remedium, and this is not an ultimum remedium yet. So we need to be, I think, we need to be mindful of balancing carefully between, our desire to continue grow the startup landscape and the innovation for Indonesia technology space. But at the same time, make sure that it is well regulated and people are protected and doing it in the most simple way, most effective way. And if it's already been governed, then why don't we let the relevant law govern it? But that's from our side.
Thank you, Mbak Shinto. Carmela, do you want to add something about regarding this issue?
Right, as a software engineer, I can't really comment to the sanctions, but as Google, we believe that safeguarding the internet in the digital age is very important. And as Shinto said, we believe that smart regulation can support a dynamic marketplace for businesses and all types of sizes and all types.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we're moving on to the next question. This is for Carmela. One of the audience asks about how to secure data that is stored in cloud. If data removed, will it leave digital footprint? Maybe as an engineer, you have an expertise.
That I can come to, yes, thank you. All right, yes. So yes, you can always delete your data, and we have a process for this data deletion, and it'll be deleted, and then it'll stop being used from our algorithm. So because if there's like an artificial intelligence model that might have your data in there, but it'll be removed from all of our models and from our storage. And then you can always make sure that the data that you want to be stored is stored so that you don't then have to be deleting it regularly, right? So you could set, for example, auto delete if you want it to be deleted every 6 months, because maybe you want to have your location history for the last 2 or 3 months if you want to remember what restaurant you went to, for example. We know that data is very useful for our users, and that's why we store it, to make our products useful. So you can always delete it if you want, and you can then always go to the privacy checkup and see what sort of settings you have on, so that then you can see what's being stored or what's not being stored, and you can always change it.
Thank you very much for the answer. The next question is for Carmela again, I guess. So this is about Google privacy and terms. So one of the audience asked about one of the passage in the terms of privacy. So the passage says that we also collect the content you create, upload, or receive from others when using our services. This includes things like email you write and receive, photos and videos you save, docs and spreadsheets you create, and comments you make on YouTube videos. Can you explain how Google control this and how Google know to stop collecting and managing the personal data?
So we think about data in 2 big buckets, mostly of what you do and what you store, or like what you save. So this goes into the bucket of what you save. So your emails, your pictures, your documents, things that you create, and we store that for you. And we have the utmost security on top of all of this so that nobody else can have access to it. And we do not use any of this information to serve ads. But then, of course, there's the other information of things that you do. So when you go somewhere, when you browse the internet, but you can always decide to delete that information. And also recently, last year in Google I/O, we announced the incognito mode for multiple of our biggest apps. So in search, maps, and YouTube, you can go and turn incognito mode on if you don't want any of your data to be stored while you're browsing the internet.
Okay, thank you. Actually, we still have another question for you. This is a little bit technical, actually. Does Google Chrome have an inbuilt or ads-on for protecting the user from social media tracker? Because one of the audience noticed that another search engine services have that kind of system.
Right. So I don't work in Chrome directly, but I know that we also announced last year that we're taking measures with third-party cookies to make sure that things are safeguarded as well as good as possible. But I can't really speak to the details because I don't work in Chrome, unfortunately.
It's okay. Thank you very much. Okay, we're moving on to the next question. Let me see. This is for Google again. What Google have done to educate the market on privacy and security?
So this is part of why we have this Google Safety Engineering Center. Part of it is to educate. It's one of the big 4 pillars. And this is why we're doing events like this, or the events that I mentioned in my presentation, which we partner with folks in Indonesia or like governments or NGOs to have events to share what we're doing and also empower people to have a better understanding of their security and their privacy. Multiple people already mentioned it's important to have regulations, but also it's important for us to all be empowered and take control of our data online.
Okay. We're moving on to the next question. This is about data storage. So I think this is quite an sensitive issue in Indonesia actually, because Indonesians are always wondering where the technology giants like Google or maybe other companies store the data of Indonesians. So can you answer one of the questions from our audience, where Google store Indonesian users data? And maybe Basinto want to add also about this question, just to clear the air, maybe. Maybe Carmela want to answer first?
Yeah, so our Google Cloud customers have always had the choice on where to store their data. And recently we launched in Indonesia our Jakarta cloud region so that data is stored locally. And we're doing our best to safeguard users' data at all times.
Basinto, how about Gojek regarding this issue?
We're an Indonesian company, so where we save our data would always be in compliance with Indonesian law and regulation, and we are a proud Indonesian company. Anak
Thank
bangsa.
you very much. Just like the name of your company, right? Yeah, we're moving on to the next question. Considering that the data protection bill, considering that the data protection bill has been prepared since 2000 and, this is the question for the ICT minister, for Pak Dedy actually. Let me see another question. Okay, there is a draft regulation from ICT Ministry that transfer to personal data overseas will require ICT Ministry approval. Is it correct? So far, I understand that GR 71 2019 allows. Where is the question? Sorry, I have to open the Q&A box first. All right. Yeah, maybe Mas Wahyu want to answer this. There is a draft regulation from ICT Ministry that transfers to personal data overseas will require as ICT Ministry approval. Is it correct, Mas?
Yeah, I think it is the mandate from the government regulation number 71 on 2019 on the electronic system management, electronic system implementation. But before I mention this issue, I will give the perspective about the differences between the issue of the data sovereignty and the data localization and the issue of the data protection. It is a different way because the debate about the data protection, it is about how the subject data can control their data in processing in any place, and there is no relevance between the data protection and where is the data storage. So it is a different way. In the European Union, the debate about the data residencies, it is the new concept how to debate about the issue of data localization, data sovereignty, and what is the connectivity with the issue of the data protection. So if we debate about the data protection, there is no article or there is no issue related with the obligation of the data localization. But if we refers to the government regulation number 71 on 2019, Indonesia follow the models of the specific sectors. So just the specific data or strategic data have the obligation to conduct data localization, and the second need of the permit from the Ministry of ICT or need from the government to conduct of the data transfer. It is similar with the Indian models. Indian also refers the models of the for the specific domain of the data. They need of the consent from the data subject or need of the permit from the Indian government. So currently Indonesia try to regulate the technicality levels of the mandate of the government regulation number 71 on 2019.
Thank you, Mas Wahyu. We still have one or two questions, I guess, because we still have time. This is for Mbak Shinto or Mas Wahyu. As stakeholders to the Personal Data Protection Bill, do you think the bill can be passed this year? What are the contentious points in the current data protection bill most pressing to address? Maybe Mas Wahyu want to answer first? Or Mbak Shinto, maybe? Oh, Mas Wahyu first. Okay.
Dulu deh.
Mas Wahyu, okay. Mas Wahyu first.
Okay. We hope the process will be end on this year or in the end of the year, because we need so long time to discuss about the data protection bill in Indonesia since 2014 until now, and currently still in progress in the House. So there are several notes and concern in the content of the bills, but we can discuss the several notes with the House member, especially in the issue of the establishment of the Data Protection Authority, the categorization of the data, especially related with the specific data or sensitive data, and also try to clearly statement or clearly formulation regarding the right of data subject and the obligation of data controller. And the important issue, we try to formulate the fair models of the sanction in the law, because it is I can cite the law is to over criminalization, because so many the new ovens or criminal ovens in the bill, and it is have the different vision with the amendment of the criminal code in Indonesia.
Yeah, from our side, we're, like a lot of what we do, we really want, and given the growth of the internet users in Indonesia, we're really looking forward to have the law being passed on this year, hopefully. However, bearing in mind that there has to be some reconsiderations of several concepts being tabled in the law. For example, the specific personal data, the explicit consent that is required, which is still not aligned with the international practice, and the and the setback that we would have experienced as industry and as a country if we're not aligned with the international practices. We would also, really encourage the government to keep it simple, and to be less to not put all the criminal sanctions and make the data protection law really heavy. Also to be mindful of some of the requirements, for example, for the data controllers, the timeline in fulfillment of the data subject requests in the current data, which is not doable technically. And to ensure that the data protections serve the functions of, as a pillar to protect and to also continue, be the pillars for innovation instead of the other way around, which means it also, the job is not done when the law is being passed. But educational element of it, the continuous public consultancy, and there has to be sufficient transition. If the data, if the law is being passed on for immediate application, I think it would be quite disastrous. But the sooner the better for us.
Okay, thank you, Mbak Shinto. I think this is the last. We have one more question. This will be the last for this session. So, do the speakers think that digital literacy campaign really work to promote more awareness for the public, and what are their long-term goals? Who wants to start first? Maybe Mas Wahyu, Carmela, or Shinto?
Let's give the opportunity to our guest, Carmela, who
Okay.
comes all the way from Munich.
All right, thank you
Carmela,
very
then.
much. Yeah, I do believe that they help, and I see it also in my friend circle and in my family circle, how the internet is quite new for some of the people, for example, in my family, and they don't quite understand how things work. But then when we show them these campaigns or we show them websites that we create just for this purpose, then they start to understand and they start to be more secure. And that's the most important thing, that people need to better understand what the risks are and what the consequences are, so that then they can take action. And also for them to know how they can take action, right? What are the things that they can do? Like maybe take a security checkup or a password checkup, or protect their passwords. And I think it's very important for us to keep on investing in this.
Thank you, Carmela. Mbak Shinto, do you want to add
Yes.
something?
And for us, digital literacy is very important for us. And I think, it's been a long day. And seeing a video is always nice to close the day with sum up the principles, and with sum up the importance of keeping your data safe, and to protect your data when you're using digital platforms. So maybe we can do it in a video format.
Okay, thank you, Mbak Shinto. Oh, do you want to play the video or?
Yes, let's play the video.
Okay, okay.
Hai, saya Reza Rahadian. Sebagai seorang aktor, saya harus memberikan akting yang sangat meyakinkan. Dan tidak jarang ada penonton yang tertipu. Ikut terbawa emosi sampai merasa bahwa itu hal yang sesungguhnya terjadi. Saya bisa jadi orang yang sangat serius. Atau bahkan sangat kocak. Saking miripnya, penonton lupa. Itu cuman pura-pura. Seperti teknik manipulasi psikologis atau magis yang banyak digunakan pada penipuan aplikasi online, di mana pelaku akan berusaha untuk meyakinkan korbannya. Saya pernah ditelepon, ngakunya sih dari Gojek, diminta menyebutkan kode OTP yang dikirim melalui SMS. Kode OTP tidak boleh dibagikan pada siapapun, termasuk Gojek, karena Gojek tidak akan meminta kode OTP atau transfer untuk alasan apapun. Saya tahu, ini pasti penipuan. Kita bisa tetap aman dengan langkah jaga. Jangan transfer di luar aplikasi, amankan data pribadi, jangan bagikan kode OTP, gunakan PIN, adukan hal yang mencurigakan. Terima kasih. Ingat, keamanan adalah tanggung jawab kita bersama. Tetap waspada dan ingat jaga. Aman bersama Gojek.
Ingat, data pribadi kita adalah aset berharga. Mari bersama-sama kita jaga keamanannya.
And I think that's sort of like sum up what we need to do. So jaga.
Nice video. I hope the audience are not really distracted with the actor and just pay attention to the message of the video. Mas Wahyudi, maybe you want to add something about our last question today?
Yeah, I agree with Mbak Shinto. The digital literacy is very important to public awareness about how to protect their data. But we need to set up of the systematic approach of digital literacy because the first thing in digital literacy is to ensure the scale of spectrum and purpose of digital literacy. Is it simple to encourage people using smart devices? How to use of the Gojek platform or to sending the message, but what is about the specific capability related to data, etc. So I think the government need to set up of the new approach and new perspective of the digital literacy and conduct of the systematic strategy in the conduct of the digital literacy in Indonesia.
Thank you, Mas Wahyudi. I think that's all for the Q&A session. And we're sorry if we are not able to answer all of your questions, participants. I will hand it over back to Mbak Afra. Mbak Afra.
Okay, thank you, Apriza. So the last question and Gojek's video actually marks the end of our discussion today. So to wrap up our webinar this afternoon, I want to invite all of the speakers here to give their brief closing remarks for the discussion today. So let's start with Carmela and Mbak Shinto and then Mas Wahyudi. The floor is yours.
Great. Yeah, thank you very much. I wanted to thank the Jakarta Post and all the speakers for this very interesting discussion. It was quite interesting. And we just want to make sure that we empower Indonesians to take control over their online security. And it's very important to understand that privacy and security settings that work for you are what we try to build. And we really encourage you to take control of your privacy and security, to take the privacy and security checkup and make sure that you're safe online.
Okay, thank you, Carmela. Maybe over to Mbak Shinto. Is there anything you want to say?
Well, I keep it simple. It's a jaga. So always, keep your password safety. Do not share your OTP. Your safety and the protections of your data is also part of your responsibility. And from Gojek, we'll do our best to protect your data. And please do not do the chat outside the apps. And we hope the PDP law is being passed soon. And thank you for the opportunity, Jakarta Post. It's always a pleasure.
It's always a pleasure for us too, Mbak Shinto. Thank you so much. Mas Wahyu, is there anything else you want to say?
Okay. Yeah, the discussion of personal data protection bill surely becomes a new challenge for us because we don't have the history about how to formulate of the strong regulation of data protection. But it doesn't mean that we cannot produce a meaningful data protection law, which meets our needs and is portion to the general principle of the data protection. As the role of all multi-stakeholders is needed in the discussion process. So let's together oversee the process in the House to oversight of the Parliament member in the deliberation of data protection bill. Thank you, Afra, and thank you, Jakarta Post.
Okay, thank you, Mas Wahyudi. So let's give a big round of appreciation for our amazing speakers here, Carmela, Mbak Shinto, and Mas Wahyu, as well as Pak Dedy, who left earlier. Thank you for having provided us with enlightening discourse this afternoon. I must say that our discussion today is very insightful, and we are very glad for the audience enthusiasm in talking about this topic with us. So now I'm going back the floor to Apriza. Apriza, please.
Thank you, Mbak Afra. Thank you again for all the speakers and the participants for the delightful discussions today in Jakpost Up Close. I would like to remind you that we will have another webinar coming up next week, and the topic will be about diplomacy in time of pandemic, Indonesia's perspective. So if you're interested in the topic, please don't forget to register. Stay tuned to our website, thejakartapost.com, for more information. Or if you want to get access to a lot of insightful stories and want the Jakarta Post to contribute more to public discourse, subscribe today, not tomorrow, today on thejakartapost.com/packages. Don't forget to follow our social media, the Jakarta Post on Facebook, at Jakpost on Twitter, and at Jakpost Images on Instagram to get the latest updates from us. Before I close today's webinar, I'd like to invite all of the speakers to take a picture. Please put up your brightest smile, and I'll count to 3, and then we're ready to go. Ready? Okay. 1, 2, and 3. Thank you very much. Once again, thank you very much to everyone. Have a great day. Stay safe and stay well. Please don't forget to exercise. See you on the next webinar. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.